Unsolved Mysteries, we covered the death of Nirvana singer Kurt Cobain. This week on Unsolved Mysteries, we'll be covering the infamous death of Edgar Allan Poe. Continue watching to find out the real scoop of his death. Was it the alcohol? Was it a deadly disease? Or maybe it was murder? Find out on this episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
My name is Michelle, and I'm a historian who studies famous 19th century figures. And concerning Edgar Allan Poe, what we know is that he was headed to Philadelphia on September 27, 1849, to attend an editing business meeting, but he never actually made it there. And about a week later, on October 3rd, he was found by Joseph Walker. He actually lived 4 days after being found, but he slipped in and out of consciousness until he died on the 4th day. So with the limited amount of info we have, these different theories come into play as a result of putting the pieces together and solving this sort of puzzle.
What's your name?
My name is Josie Walker.
So, what is the relation between you and Edgar Allan Poe?
Well, me and Edgar Allan Poe have worked before together. He was one of my closest co-workers.
And many people say you were the one that found him a couple days before his death, correct?
Yes, indeed. I found him laying in front of a bar, just there with shabby clothing, in the gutter, like homeless.
And how would you describe the way that he was found?
He was very delirious. I would ask him, like, what's his name? He would be in and out of conscience, and did not know where he was.
Okay, and do you remember anything that he said specifically, or?
Yes, actually, I asked him if he knew anybody in Baltimore, and he just kept saying Joseph Snodgrass, Joseph Snodgrass, and he was a magazine editor that knew some medical training.
Interesting. And what did you do after you found him?
I did as he told me. I wrote a letter and immediately told him that we needed help and that he had no conscience.
Okay, thank you so much.
Excuse me? Sir, are you okay? Edgar, do you need help? Do you know anybody in Baltimore?
Joseph E. Snodgrass,
Who's that? Is he a doctor?
magazine editor and medical trainer.
How can I contact him?
You can write him.
Write him a letter?
One theory actually suggests that he was beaten. He was supposedly beaten by this group of men for injuring a woman, but none of his documentation ever stated that he was physically injured prior to his death, so that theory kind of goes out the window. But one theory that really seems to hit the ball out of the park, though, is cooping. And what cooping is, it's this method in which you get a random victim and you disguise them several times, over and over. And then you have them vote for a certain candidate. And after each voting, the voter is given alcohol, kind of as a reward. This all makes sense when you think about it. I mean, he was found on election day, passed out in front of Gunners Hall where the votings took place, was found in someone else's clothing. He didn't take alcohol well, and him being passed out, it all makes sense. So you'd think that we would have stopped there. The problem was solved. But it wasn't until over 2 decades later did we make a new breakthrough that blows every other theory out of the water. And that's when they dug up his body for relocation and found that shrunken...
Oh, you're funny. I need it. Oh yeah, that's right. You never find this mark back.
Hi, I am Dr. Guido, and we are examining Edgar Allan Poe. He is experiencing lapse of consciousness, which is diagnosed as a seizure. Seizures is an indicator of a brain tumor, which also affects a person's personality.
Senator Ted Kennedy fought a long and hard battle against brain cancer, but a brain tumor doesn't have to be an automatic death sentence. Dr. Paul Pagnini is a radiation oncologist and a brain specialist. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
First off, let's talk about malignant gliomas, which is what Ted Kennedy was diagnosed with, and what they do to your brain.
Malignant gliomas are certainly one of the most devastating brain tumors that a patient can be diagnosed with. Senator Kennedy's tumor was in the left parietal lobe in this region here. As they expand, they put a lot of pressure on the normal structures surrounding them, so patients can present with neurologic symptoms like headache, seizures, motor dysfunction, or language dysfunction.
The big thing here is we don't want everyone at home who has a headache to think, oh my gosh, I've got a brain
That's right.
tumor. Because
Absolutely
it's
not.
relatively
Exactly.
uncommon.
You know, patients tend to know themselves. If they're having a headache that they feel is similar to what they've had in the past, they say, oh, I've had these. It's similar, you know, take something, it gets better. Not to worry. But it's really for somebody who has a type of a headache that they've never really ever had before in its severity, and also that may be associated with other symptoms such as a neurologic deficit or nausea or something that's new to them and concerning.
You know, kids tend to get headaches less than adults, so often parents will bring them into my office because that's what they're worried about, a brain tumor. And you know, it's still pretty rare, but it does happen in kids. Another sign I look for is if it's progressive. Used to be once a month they get a headache, then it was once a week, now it's every day. Definitely a red flag.
And
Absolutely.
new onset headaches, if you're over the age of 50, you've never had headaches before, and all of a sudden you're having headaches all the time, you need to get it worked up. Let's talk about what we do on the show. We talk about hope. Now, Ted Kennedy lost his battle, but what treatments did they use, and what treatments not only do you use but are on the horizon for brain cancer?
The standard of care is actually what he did receive. He sought out his treatment at Duke Medical Center, where he had a surgery with Dr. Alan Friedman initially. They resected what they could, and what we as brain tumor specialists want to do with this type of a tumor is really get out as much as safely possible without causing deficits. You certainly can't leave the patient worse off than they are coming in. The next, or post-operative segment of therapy, is radiation therapy, which is what I do, and typically a patient receives a 6-week course of external beam radiotherapy with an oral chemotherapy pill called Temodar at a low dose. That's followed then by about 6 to 9 months of a higher dose of Temodar, and that's the standard therapy, and that's what we believe he received.
So once again, cooping would seem like the most accurate theory in terms of historical evidence, but the legitimate physical evidence was found in his decaying corpse, which leads us to believe that he would and could have lived a longer life if not for his brain tumor, and so we believe that's it.